Hey y'all, this is Susie. Welcome back to my craft room. Okay, I'm going to show you what I've done and where I'm headed with this project. And hopefully it'll give you some inspiration or some ideas about where you might want to head with your project. Okay, whether you're using the same kits as I am or not, doesn't make any difference. You want to think about where you're going with it and kind of what your vision is for the completed project. And, right now you may not have a vision of the completed project yet. It might keep developing as you go. And that's okay. You don't have to start out with the vision. You can just kind of go with it and things will come to you when you see different things. You'll incorporate it and you'll know that, that's what you want. Okay. Now, if you've used cardstock and printed on cardstock, then you're not going to have any issues, but you still are, you do have to reinforce this edge anyway. Even with cardstock, you need to put that extra piece that I was telling you about on there to reinforce it, because you need that reinforcement for the rings to go in. Of course, you can use the hole reinforcers. I like the looks of this better than I like the hole reinforcers, but, it's up to you. However you want to do it, do you. Okay, now I did have a question about lines that show up when you glue your pages down. Well, I couldn't figure out what lines. Now, I know I was watching Tina over at Shabby Dabby Doodah, and she was talking about every time that she would go to glue down her doily pieces, they were turning black. Well, I went through all of my papers looking for lines and could not figure out, and I even used different glues to see if I would get different results, and I never did get any lines, so to speak. And I thought the question was about like visible lines that would be black or brown or, some kind of, lines. But I think what the question was about was ripples. I think like these ripples. Now, I do have it on several of the pages, and of course some are worse than others. Now, let me just say first, these are homemade. These are not done by a publisher and bound in a book. Basically, I've made my own cardstock. So, what happens is when you use glue, say straight from the bottle, like that. If you don't smooth out that glue, it is difficult to get the lines of the glue out. Even if you use a brayer or say, your card and you're on a completely flat surface, you will get most of them out, okay? But there's still going to be some that are in there. What helps with that, to avoid that, is if you apply your glue with a brush. And I actually recommend using Mod Podge or a thin down, PVA glue. I don't care if it's Elmer's glue or, whatever glue you're using. Maybe it's tacky glue. Thin it down a little bit and brush it out. Or if you just use it straight out the bottle, brush that glue out. Put your paper down and then take your brayer or, a card or whatever you happen to have and work that out the best you can. Of course, you have to be a little bit gentle so you don't tear your papers, but you can put some pressure on it to get them out. Now, also, what helps is I iron my pieces when I'm done. Now, I know some people are never, ever going to iron again. They're tired of ironing. They did their ironing in their lifetime and never, ever, ever. They'll say, I don't even iron my clothes, and I'm dang sure not going to iron paper. I get that. Trust me, I get it. But I do iron all my papers. It gives them a better look, and it really doesn't take me long at all to do it. So, you can also put your pages under heavy books, to make that work. But to me, that's a lot of work, sticking these, under various books. So I just iron mine. It just takes, it would take me more time to put them under books and to get it back out than it does to iron everything. So this is what works for me, but you do you. Okay. So I hope that answers the question about the lines. I hope it's, the ripples is what you're talking about. So when you're doing it straight out of the bottle like that, if you don't smooth it out, you're never going to get those ripples to do right. So I do recommend that you start with you know, like a sponge type brush. I mean, you can even use a paintbrush, but I would probably go with a wider paintbrush. I don't have one handy. Now, when I did these bigger pieces, I actually used a big brush. And that way I could go very quickly and I could spread it out evenly. And some of my pages are almost exactly flat. So just remember, give yourself grace. These are homemade. You don't want them to look like they were mass produced somewhere. You know, you want them to have that texture and that personality. I mean, that's what we go for, is texture. So, you know, don't worry about it if your pages aren't completely smooth and flat. I mean, it makes them feel good. It makes them look good. It makes them more aged in appearance. So it's okay. Give yourself grace. It's perfectly fine. Okay, so now I've taken all my decorative pages for this particular kit, and I've gone ahead and glued them down, because remember I told you I want to leave one side for decorating, either, you know, for journaling, you know, maybe we will stamp something, maybe, you know, we will add an embellishment of some sort, but I want to leave plenty of journaling space. Now, I did use 2 copies of the background pages here, and so every other page is a printed page. Now, one thing you need to be sure of when you are gluing your pieces down, if you're gluing them, if you didn't print out on cardstock and you're gluing your pieces down, make sure that they're facing in the right direction so that your reinforced piece is to the left, because we're going to punch our holes over here. So you want to make sure they're facing up and that your left side is on the reinforcement piece. Okay, and then when you go to put everything together, make sure that you have all of your reinforced pieces to the left. So that's how you do that. All right, now I'm going to sew around all of my pages because I like the stitch look on there. I have decided that I'm going to use a gray thread to do that with, because I like the grays that are in here. I think it will, you know, really be stunning. So I'm going to sew around every one of my pages. Now, before I sew, I'm going to put my holes in. The reason for that is you do not want to cut through your stitches. And if you sew and then end up cutting through your stitches will come out. So I was mentioning yesterday about possibly using a piece of notebook paper to see about where to space your holes. And I'll tell you, the middle of these holes is a 1/2 inch from the edge to the middle of the hole, not the edge of the hole, but to the middle of the hole would be 1/2 inch. So if you want to mark these, you can. Now, a 1/2 inch is going to take you to the edge of your reinforced piece. So if that bothers you, then you can move over to the left a little bit and have it through the reinforced piece. I want mine through the reinforced piece. That's exactly why I put it there. So mine's going to go to the left a little bit. So whatever I do, I'm going to go 1 inch down and probably like 3/8 of an inch in, so that my hole is completely in the reinforced area. I hope that makes sense. So what I want to do is, this piece looks a little bit bigger, so I want to find one of my skinnier pieces, or maybe all these are kind of the same. But I'm going to check and see what my smallest looking piece is, and then I want to see kind of where I want my hole, like that. Well, let me do it this way. Say like that. And maybe I can make just a little indenture and measure in to see how far in that hole is. So remember, I told you I'm going to go 1 inch from the top and 1 inch from the bottom, and then I'm going to figure out exactly how far, because I want that about midway in that reinforced piece, so that I have a good reinforcement on both sides of this page. I don't recommend that you go to the edge of the reinforcements. If you do, I mean, you know, that's up to you, but I recommend, I mean, that's why we put that there, was to make sure that that the holes were going to be reinforced. So keep that in mind. So if you stitch this first, and then you come back with your hole punch, and you happen to punch in your stitching, it's going to weaken your threads and they can come loose. So go ahead and make your holes first and then stitch. Okay. So I've decided on, and then I cut out these envelope pieces from this kit. So these will be made into envelopes. So these will be folded up and there are lines that show you, you know, where they're supposed to be folded. And I will, you know, kind of follow those lines like that. This is the prettiest paper, I tell you. Okay, so this is how this will look when it's all done. Now, I want to stitch this, but not with my flaps all closed, because then I would be sewing my flaps down, and I don't want to do that. I want to leave it where there's room to get things in and out of there. So I'm going to open this back up, and I will literally sew around this square and then around this top flap. I hope that makes sense. So I'm going to do that on both of my envelope pieces. Now on my smaller pieces, these little like rectangular journaling cards, I will sew around those. And you know, whatever thread that I start out with on the kit, I'm going to use throughout the kit. So just keep that in mind. You don't want to change your thread colors. So that's what I'm going to do with these. I will sew around these with the rounded corners as well. Now I will point this out. Whenever you're making little journaling cards that you're going to stick in pockets, rounding the corners of your whatever you're going to stick in pockets makes it easier to get them in and out of, because your little points don't get hung up as much. Now I don't always round my corners, but I mean I'm just letting you know that for, you know, whatever future reference you might want to know, that rounding them, it does make them go in and out. Okay, now I also want to mention, when you cut your pieces out, like I don't know if you can see this or not, but this is not perfectly round. You know, I've got a little burr right there. So what I do with that is I just take a little file and kind of file that, just kind of like that, and now it's got a rounded look. So, you know, and it just takes just a little tiny bit of effort to get those little points off. So that's how I'm going to do those. So I will sew around those. And then there's these little envelopes, and I may have, no, okay, these little envelopes, and again, I will sew around this middle section and then around this top flap, and I'm going to do that on those. This is also a type of envelope, and it folds up like that. I didn't get that exactly folded right. And then it folds down like that. Okay, again, now on this one, I could actually sew this to this, because it doesn't have the extra little piece like this that will give you the deeper pocket. So I could go ahead and fold those over and just sew all the way around there, and then across this line and this line. I hope that makes sense. So that's what I'm going to do for these envelopes. Okay, the belly band, I will go ahead and sew around it as well. Now my envelopes were done as double thickness, because it's, well, actually I made a mistake and did this one triple thick, and it's really hard to get them to fold nicely and to lay nicely. So the rest of them I did on just a double thickness paper, you know, a piece of copy paper plus, you know, my printed piece of copy paper. And these will fold up really nice. They won't crack. You know, everything will look lovely. And like I said, I will sew around there, and then I'll sew around that. And then I'll fold up my envelope, you know, and then we'll glue it down whenever. Okay, now on these smaller little tags, at this point, I do not plan to sew around these. And I do not plan to sew around these. I may change my mind at some point, but right now, you know, I'm not thinking that I will. So, because it's just so tedious, and these, especially these little tiny ones, would be very difficult to work with on the sewing machine. I might be able to get away with that one without too much trouble, but it's very, very wavy. And these are just so small as well. Trying to get those manipulated in my sewing machine would be a problem. If I absolutely want the stitch look, I can just take my little, you know, fine tip marker and go around the edge, you know, to make it appear as stitching. Okay. Now these little tags and these, you may be tempted to go ahead and put holes in them. And if you want to do that, that's perfectly fine. Whatever you want to do. But think ahead. I'm not going to put holes in mine yet, because I don't know exactly how I want to use these. I may want to use these in little pockets. I may want to put a fabric little tab on here, or ribbon or something, you know, or I may want to punch the holes and put something in there. So I'm not sure how I'm going to use these. Now I am sure on these smaller ones that I'm going to use glossy accents. Actually, I'm going to use clear fingernail polish, but you know, if you have glossy accents, you know, you can use that obviously. But glossy accents to me is very expensive, and clear nail polish does the same job. So I'm definitely on these smaller ones going to put that on there. Now, I may or may not on these bigger ones. I'm not sure how I want to use them yet. Now, remember in one of the previous videos, if you've been with me for a little bit, that we made some dangles with some of our little pieces where we, you know, put the holes and then put the bulb pins or safety pins through and hung them off pieces of lace and things. So we may want to hang these off of pieces of lace off the sides, you know, just making danglies out of them. These we might want to use as little tuck spots. I mean, I just don't know yet how I want to use these. So these I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure I'm not going to sew these, and I don't want to put holes in them quite yet. Now, I will probably on these, because I do know I want to make danglies out of these, but I'm not sure about these yet, so I'm not going to put holes. Now, if you have a teeny tiny little hole puncher, not like this, which punches like, I'm going to punch it beside this so you can see the difference. I hope y'all can tell that difference. I mean, it's teeny-tiny compared to that. That's what I would use in these tiny little pieces. And actually, I could go ahead and punch the holes in this, because if I want to put something else on it, I could. I could put a fabric cover, you know, tab on it and cover the hole. So, you know, if you don't have one of those little tiny hole punches, you don't want great big holes like this in these pieces. So just take your awl, or, you know, whatever you use to make holes with, and you can just, you know, punch little holes in that, and, you know, they'll be about the same. You know, it just depends on how deep you go as to how wide your hole will be. So there are lots of ways to make little holes that look just fine, and you don't have to have a tiny hole punch. I wouldn't have the tiny hole punch if someone hadn't gifted it to me. Actually, that was part of an inheritance that I got. So I didn't even know they made such a thing until, you know, I got that. So that's my plan with these. Also, what I'm planning on doing is instead of using ink around the edges, because I really want this to be very feminine and very pretty, I am going to outline these in silver. And yes, I could use a silver ink, but I think I would prefer to use the paint. And I know this is just real professional, right? And I'm just going to go around the edges of all my pieces with that silver paint. And I don't want it to be perfect. This is homemade, and I just don't want it, I don't even need to go around these flaps. Well, this one, the top. But, you know, these are going to be tucked under, so I don't even need to go around that too much. So, but that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go around the edges of all these. Every piece that I've got, I'm going to edge it just like I would with Distress ink, but I'm going to use the silver paint. And, you know, you can use a brush. I just find with a brush, I end up kind of making more of a mess with it than I do, you know, using my fingers. But you do whatever's comfortable for you, and whatever works best for you. And if you smear it like I did, it's no big deal. I mean, it just kind of adds to the character of it. So, you know, that's what I intend to do, because I think that's going to be really striking throughout the journal. So that's my plans for this particular kit. I hope that makes sense. I just found an extra piece that didn't get ironed, and it just took a dive bomb off the other side. Okay, so now this is one set of the ephemera out of the kit and 2 sets of the background pages. I do have a second set of ephemera in case I want more. Okay. Now, I do want to say, too, when you're gluing your pieces, now, I remember, actually, when I was getting my chipboard for these, I saw that I had white, like chipboard, white backed chipboard. So I said, well, you know what? Instead of gluing a whole bunch of pages together, 3 pages to make it thick, I'm going to use this white chipboard. Well, I was, trying to get all this done, and, there's so much gluing, and, then a drying process and that whole thing. And I made a mistake, and I glued my paper on the wrong side. I should have glued it to this side to cover this up, and then the other side would have been white. So now I'm going to have to glue this back down on a white piece of paper and trim around it. And I did that with several of these, and what it'd be the smaller ones, not the big square ones. So I'm gonna have to fix those. So we don't always get it right the first time. Don't worry about it. It's just paper. I mean, seriously, it's not that serious. So just give yourself grace, take your time, do what you need to do. Okay. Now I showed y'all that I had these ready already. So now all I need to do is punch my holes in these pages, because I told y'all that I'm not planning on using any background pages, to fill up the whole page. Now what I did do is I went through the background pages and found the ones that have these outlines and the lines. And so I went ahead and cut these pages in half. And then I trimmed some off the edge because I wanted the part that's on this side of the line to be about the same side as this side. So I measured it and I got it close, and then I trimmed those off so that I can glue these down, kind of center them on my page here and glue those down, and that will look nice and give plenty of journaling space. And then if we wanted to trim those with something, we could, or ink around it, whatever we wanted to do, we can make that work. So I am going to use these throughout. Now again, this is what I'm showing you is from one copy of the background pages and one copy of the ephemera. I do have a second copy of the background pages and the ephemera ready to go if I need more or want to use more. Now, these are the background pages that I chose. And, but I'm not going to use these on here like this. I did go ahead and attach these to a second piece, and you can see the ripples real bad in this one, okay? And this is when I used the glue straight out the bottle to try to see what kind of lines we were talking about. And this is how I figured out what lines we were talking about. This is no big deal. I'm going to use these to make envelopes and pockets and tucks and, whatever I want to out of these background papers. But I do have them already glued down and ready to go. So they're ready to fold and cut and whatever we want to do with them. So that's what I did with my background pages. Now, and like I said, I went ahead and made them double thick so that if I, no matter what I make with them, they're ready to go. These I did not do double thickness because I do intend to glue these straight to the page, which is already double thick. So that's what I intend to do with that. Now these are either the large journaling cards or we can use them for pockets. I went ahead and glued these down to cardstock, or the chipboard. Now you can see I have to go back and fix some of my edges. No big deal. And if you're sewing and it's not glued down all the way, don't worry about it because you're going to sew that up. Now I do want to check my edges to make sure that they get glued down because my stitching will not come exactly to the edge. It'll come in just a little bit. So I do want those to look nice. So the ones that did not stick good, I will fix. And then I'm going to sew around my pages here, and these pieces for sure. Okay, and then I have my journaling cards like this. And I will be sewing around the edges of these. Because, these are big enough to do that with. And they will look nice. Okay. Now I have these little dudes. I have no clue how I'm going to use these yet. I haven't got that far ahead, so if y'all have any ideas, please share. I do not think I'm going to try to stitch around these. I think that'll be too fiddly, for me to work with in, the sewing machine. I might Mod Podge over the top. I just don't know yet. I might go for a shinier look. I'm just not sure. You know, I could, I guess, do the glossy accents or clear nail polish on that. I'm just not sure. Those would make cute little danglies. I think they would make great little tucks, you know, or even top tucks, you know, at the top of the page to tuck, you know, maybe some, like, journaling pages under, a little booklet or something. So I'm not sure, but I want to have them ready. So after I have stitched around everything that I'm going to stitch around, I'm going to ink this up. And I am going to use the vintage photo for distressing. I did, you know, kind of compare that against these papers. I think it looks good. I'm going to use that. Now, if I start out and decide that, you know, I really don't, I'm not, you know, just loving the vintage photo, then I will change it up to something else. But I want this to be a little more of a shabby looking journal because it, you know, it's a man's journal. So what I'm probably going to do is take and rough up my edges before I distress them so that they look a little more ragged. I may end up tearing some of these sheets as well just to get the more ragged look. So that would be those. And then we have a couple of these right here. And I think I'm going to use those for like tickets. I think that's what I'm going to do with those. I'm not positive, but I think that's what I'm going to do. Or I can, you know, put the holes in here and make them danglies, you know, part of the danglies that hang off of stuff. I'm just not sure yet. I just don't want to make them look too frilly and feminine. So that's kind of the thing I'm going for now. Now these that are shaped like this, they are probably big enough to sew around, and I may try one and see if I like it. If I do, then I might go ahead and do the rest. Otherwise, I'm not. I think, you know, I could use these as danglies, but they're kind of long. So I probably just want to use these as tags. So you decide how you want to use yours if you're using the same kit. And if you're not, and you want to make your own pieces, make them look whatever shape and size that you want to. So, but I did want to tell you, I am going to, you know, sew around my pages. I'm going to sew around my big pieces, you know, of ephemera, possibly these. I might try one of these. I just don't know, but I don't think I will on the little tiny pieces. So that's kind of where I'm headed with both of these. So I don't know that I'll get both of these done by tomorrow to film tomorrow. You know, both of them completely ready to start putting pockets and decorating and things like that in. But hopefully I'll have at least one or the other by tomorrow. And then that'll give me the weekend to kind of play catch up and get the other one ready to go so that y'all can see, you know, how I'm going to, you know, embellish, make pockets and things like that. I also probably am going to decorate a little bit, either as we go or at the end, so you can kind of see my thought process and how I decide on different things, which is pretty random. I want to show you that I don't spend a lot of time making decisions. You know, I don't, you know, move stuff, you know, around 15 times on the same page. You know, I know if that's going to work on there or not. You know, if I put it here and I like it with this, but I don't necessarily like the position, then I'm going to keep this page, but I just want to find the right spot for it. Okay, so that's kind of, you know, how that goes. You know, you want to kind of stay within your theme. So if you're not using the kits and you're using your own thing, then you may want to make it a completely junky junk journal, or you may want to stay with the theme. So all of my colors are going to be kind of matchy-matchy. You know, any trims or laces or strings or whatever are all going to be kind of matchy. So keep in mind, you know, how you want to, you know, decorate it, you know, try to start forming a vision of how you think you might want things to look. Like I said, it doesn't matter if you don't have a clear vision right now of where you're headed, because it will develop as you go. And all of a sudden you're going to have a light bulb moment and say, oh, I know exactly how I want this to look when I'm done. It's probably not going to look exactly like you had visioned it, but, you know, at least you have an idea of the direction you're headed. So I hope that you will take, you know, today and get your pieces ready. And And then, you know, we'll take a look tomorrow at where we're at, and then we'll have the weekend to kind of play catch up and be ready to go on Monday to put it together and start placing our pieces where we think we want them to go. Again, we're going to do like we did the last time, and we're not actually going to glue them in until we put them where we think we want them, you know, see how the journal flows, and make adjustments before we glue them down for the final time. On this one, we're going to end up making a whole lot more pockets because these already have envelopes and stuff that's already pre-made. So we're not going to have so much to come up with in this one as we do in this one. So this one I think is going to be a whole lot more interactive for us, and we can decide, you know, oh, well, we want an envelope, we don't want an envelope, we want a little booklet, we don't want a little booklet, we, you know, want a concertina book in the front, we don't, you know, we want one of those accordion folder things in the front, or we don't, you know. So we will have, you know, a lot more options kind of with this than we have with you know, the pre-made pieces already, although I love these pre-made pieces, don't get me wrong. So there are advantages to both ways of doing things. So whatever style you choose, whatever is you, go for it. And you know what? You can do like me and have 2 different styles going on at the same time, or 5 different styles going on at the same time. The problem with getting too many projects going at one time is you never seem to finish any single one. So I'm going to try real hard to work on these kind of at the same time, so that y'all can see the process. And I don't want to work on more than this at one time because things will end up getting lost and, you know, scattered, and I'll have things here and there, and then, you know, I won't be able to find things. So, you know, kind of keep that in mind when you're trying to put together too many things at one time. Now this one is going to be much thicker because I have double the pages as I have in this. So y'all do what you think, you know, is good for you. And I will look forward to seeing y'all tomorrow. I do have a mail share to do with y'all. I hope to either do it today or tomorrow. You know, I've gotten some things that I've won, and, you know, I think some happy mail that I want to share. So I have several packages that I want to share with y'all. Y'all, thank you all for all my subscribers, all my new subscribers. Thank you for coming. We are so glad to have you. I hope that you will, you know, leave a comment down below of what kind of videos you would like to see. If you've been inspired, or even if you haven't, I hope that you will subscribe if you haven't already. And please, everybody, give me a thumbs up. It really helps. And please leave me a comment. You know, let me know how I'm doing. Let me know if this is, you know, a good series for you, if this is helping you. I think, you know, once we're done with this, you're going to enjoy this ring bound kind of journal. It's just a freedom to do a different kind. And so anyway, and these, you know, were absolutely inspired by G. Kerr. So, and that's what I'm doing, is honoring G. Kerr. So I'm using her papers, and I'm going to be using her techniques in this. So, you know, I'm hoping to tease you enough to go over and, you know, just binge watch her videos, because she is absolutely an amazing artist. Okay, y'all, I will see you tomorrow. I love you all. Thank you so much. Please give me a like and a comment, even if it's, you know, just a short little, you know, hi comment. I'd appreciate it. Thank you. God bless you all. Blessings and hugs to everybody, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.